All right, guys, here we are. Here we go. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is Friday, March 31st, 2023. It's our episode 310 of the Matt Murphy Show, getting underway for another day. 3 hours of what we hope to be talk radio excellence begins right now from Bold Patriot Brewing. They open up early for us on these Fridays, last Fridays of the month, and so you are invited to be a part of the show. Come on by and see us. You can have a beverage. You can maybe have a slice of pie. They got some pizza over there. Whatever you'd like, they'll do it for you at Bold Patriot Brewing Company, a great organization. We're on the west side, Charlotte Ave at L&L Market. Now, I normally refer to First Amendment Freestyle Friday as just that, First Amendment Freestyle, giving you an opportunity to speak truth to power, opening up the phone lines, and getting in there. Today is going to be a different kind of day. We are loaded up. I'm going to give you the rundown, and we're getting right into it with a variety of different subjects. We've got Paul Winkler coming up in mere seconds. We'll tell you more about Paul in just a second. Cameron Sexton is up at about 12:15, 12:20. Obviously, Speaker of the House. In the General Assembly yesterday, we saw a decay into chaos as several members, sitting members of the legislative body, attempted a takeover of the body on the floor of the House of Representatives. An insurrection, some are calling it a transurrection. I don't know which you would call it. Whatever you call it, it was absolute chaos, and we'll talk to Cameron about how to prevent that from happening again. Also, there was a bill that was passed earlier today that was actually voted against by several Democrats on both the House and the Senate side that would provide more security for private schools in the state of Tennessee. It is a shame. It is a shame. It's shameful, had these people any, that anyone would have voted against this. But many Democrats did, and we'll tell you about that coming up just after 12:15. 1 o'clock, Jay Sinclair will talk to us all about Trump indictment. He'll give us the rundown on exactly what we can expect and what we wouldn't expect. Will the judge throw it out is the big question before it even goes to trial. I doubt it, but we'll listen from Jay Sinclair and get his perspective on that. 1:30, Congressman Tim Burchett, who is, how do we put this delicately, taking it in the short hairs based on some comments that he made regarding what can and cannot be done at the federal level to prevent gun violence. We'll talk to Tim at 1:30. And then at 2 o'clock, our good friend Brink Fiddler of Defense Systems, who, as you know, I've been talking about this tragedy at Covenant School. He provided security training at the school about a year ago, and he walked the property earlier this week to attempt to assess what can be done better in future cases. We will talk to him at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So it's a absolutely loaded show prior to getting ready for the drive with Brian Wilson. We start with financial issues. And by the way, I should mention that Paul Winkler is a part of how we are able to have these Bold Patriot Brewing visits where folks stop by and have beer and whatnot. And always appreciate Paul stopping by and appreciate his sponsorship of our outings here at Bold Patriot Brewing. Hey, Paul.
Glad to be here. Yeah.
I mean, man. It has been.
I'm glad to be anywhere this week. I mean, what a crazy week.
It has been an incredibly sad and insane and frenetic week.
I was just meeting with a psychologist friend of mine, and we were just talking about chaos versus order. And I said, it's interesting because we have chaos and order around us all the time. It's kind of yin and yang of life. And just talking about how markets are affected by it, and he goes, how? And I says, the reality of it, markets are chaos. And what happens is that people get really scared in times of chaos when things look like they're bad. And then you'll hear people coming out of the woodwork with conspiracies. This is going to happen. This is what's going on. Is this where the government's going? Are they going to take over our 401ks? Are they going to take over our investments? Are they going to go and nationalize our investment accounts or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And I've had that for so many years, Matt. It's exhausting. I think back to Y2K. It's that, and I remember.
What was your experience during Y2K? I mean, people were legitimately having panic attacks about losing their retirement.
I had a guy that actually called me in April of 2000, and he was a friend of mine, and he says, "Paul, I gotta get your advice on something." I said, "What, man?" He says, "I got 4 cases of spam. I got to figure out what to do with it." And I said, man, this is something I've talked about. And I was trying to talk people off the ledge back then a lot. Right. And I said, I said, listen to me close. I said, I want you to bring it to charity, and I want you to donate it and never do that again.
Right.
But, you had that. You had Hindenburg Omen. It was another thing. That was a big talk show guy was talking about that. And 80% of the time when this happens, the market crashes. And I did a video about it, and I says, hey, look, this is nothing but data mining. You're looking for a problem. You see the market goes down, and all of a sudden you run with it, and your emotions take off. The mid part of your brain kicks in. Mm-hmm. And that mid part of the brain doesn't think. It's not connected to the front part of the brain is what happens, is the medial part of the brain. And literally what people will do is they will make these mistakes, and then all of a sudden when markets come back, it's too stinking late. They can't get back in again. And what they do is they will go into panic mode and make bad decisions. But that's what people did with the Hindenburg. And I did a video on it. Mm-hmm. I said, this is nothing but data mining. This is a bunch of garbage. Don't listen to this guy, and on and on. And I got hate mail. And people are saying, you better be right, mister. Your reputation depends on this. And he's going on and on about that. And I said, I did a video. And I said, it's garbage. 3 months later, the market was up. And, the reality of it was just absolute trash. But people bought into it, and a lot of people sold, and a lot of people hurt themselves. And you got people, the Iraqi dinar, you got the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar was another one I got emails on. And then I got emails about the Chinese currency was going to take over the dollar, and all of a sudden the dollar was not going to be, preeminent out there anymore. And let
me throw this on the table and tell me what you think about it, because what I was getting. There was a piece of legislation that went through the General Assembly.
Yeah.
And it seemed fairly innocuous. And as it was described to me, it was a modernization of certain language within the Tennessee Code regarding currency and third-party electronic transactions.
Yes.
Like PayPal, Venmo. They really had not updated certain language regarding that. People were freaking out, Paul, that this was a hidden federal conspiracy to somehow digitize us out of the dollar bill being. I didn't even understand it in its totality, but there was a lot of freak out going on that we're going to move ourselves away from an actual currency and go to quote unquote digital currency. Do you even know what that means?
What is our currency right now? Is digital. It's 93% of our, something is like 93% of our currency is ones and zeros on a computer.
Uh-huh.
If you go over to India, it's the opposite. It's 93% is in physical form. So the reality of it is our currency is really physical anyway. The whole idea of velocity of money, we've talked about that before. When you put money into a bank, they have a reserve and they lend it back out, and the money is being used 7 to 8 times.
Right.
And you think about it, when we look at a company, what you're buying is that company's ability to produce a profit. Mm-hmm. And if all of a sudden the currency changes for some reason, and I was explaining this, I was teaching at one of the universities locally yesterday, and we talked about this. The kids were asking about this as well. And I said, think about it. What happens is stocks have always sold, large U.S. stocks always sold for about $16 for every $1 of earnings. And let's say that all of a sudden the dollar is replaced for some reason. Let's just go with whatever you're talking about for a second, okay? And now all of a sudden, now we use clams. They're going to sell, stocks will sell for 16 clams for every for every clam of earnings that they've got. I don't worry about it. And a lot of times people wonder, why is it that sometimes, because politically, Democrats are very, very scared when Republicans get into power. Republicans are very scared when Democrats get in power. And we can look at huge corporations and go, gosh, some of these leaders actually vote in a really opposite way that we do. Why do they do that? Why would somebody do that? And if you think about it, if you're a big, big company and you've got a political party that will increase the barriers to entry into your industry, you might like that because you won't have as much competition on the one hand. And often I have to actually split myself. I have to dichotomize and go, okay, there's Paul that's going to be an investor coach that's going to make sure that his clients are successful on one hand. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, I've got to go, there's Paul, the American citizen that wants to see this place as being the greatest country out there. And what's really fascinating right now is what a company is going to do is if they can't increase sales, if they can't increase their economic growth through sales of products, they're going to reduce their costs. And what do we see going on all around the country right now? But reductions in staffing. We're seeing unemployment and people getting laid off.
Amazon, Disney,
yes.
I think ESPN. Not just entertainment venues, but those are the three that first come to mind. Massive layoffs on a pretty broad scale.
And the stock market's going up as a result of it, right? Because the expenses are going down. So you can't look at any political party and go, oh gosh, it's going to have an effect in the stock market, because the reality of it is stock markets have actually gone up more under Democrats than they have under Republicans. Not much more, but it's very, very close. And if you look at socialist countries around the world, there's a fascinating study done on this, that the returns in stock markets were actually higher in socialist countries. And you go, what the heck's going on there? Why? The reality of it is it more dangerous? Is it more risky to invest in a company in a country that has more control over your company, yes.
Do you believe?
And because there's more risk, there can be more return as well.
Only about a minute or two left.
Yeah, man.
But do you believe? You mentioned China.
Yes.
Do you think that it is their overall goal to try to take over the dollar as because the dollar is used as the currency of the world?
Yeah.
Do you believe ultimately they would like?
They would love to, but the issue is nobody trusts them. So remember when Mitt Romney was running and he was saying that they're a currency manipulator? Mm-hmm. That was the idea, is if they're going to manipulate the currency,
then we can't trust.
Then you can't trust them.
Right.
You can't trust them. Another country can't trust them because other countries trust us because we don't engage in that as much as people think that we did. Some people will say, yeah, you do. We don't. The whole idea of the Fed is they've got this blunt instrument called interest rates to help make sure that we have a stable currency. And they've done a fairly decent job. As much as people pick on them, they've done a fairly decent job at keeping the currency more stable than other currencies around the world. And that's why people actually use the dollar more than anything else, is because of that stability.
So would you suggest that the Fed tries to keep a steady hand in spite of the spending by the government? All right? Because that works against the balance that the Fed's trying to create.
Well,
because if you infuse,
yeah,
if you make up money on paper, and I know I'm probably saying this wrong, but if the government spends another $100 billion on this project or that project that they're borrowing against their good faith and credit, that's infusing money into the system,
right,
which creates an imbalance, which causes the Fed to have to raise the interest rates as they've been doing.
And you know what's been deflationary, though? The other aspect of things that people don't talk about is demographics. The fact that we just don't have the birth rate. And, other countries are dealing with this in a big way. If you look over at France, they had that whole thing where they're raising the retirement age from 62 to 64, and you had all of that protesting in the streets. Who was protesting? It wasn't 60-year-olds.
Young people.
Yeah, exactly.
Young people.
Yeah, and young people. And you look at it, what's the problem over there? They've got the same problem that we do, and that can be deflationary. So you think they pumped all this money in the system, why aren't we having even more inflation than we are? You wonder, and that's part of it. These war against each other.
Paul, two things. Thank you for being a calming voice in choppy waters when it comes to finances. Yeah, and thank you for letting us be out here at Bold Patriot.
It's my pleasure.
Without you, we couldn't do it. There's Paul Winkler. He'll be around. Y'all come ask Paul questions. He's got answers. It's 12:18. We've got Cameron Sexton coming up in just a moment. He's the Speaker of the House, and he'll be with us on the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Happy Friday to you, as happy as it can be. What with the negative news of this week, not only the Covenant School shooting, and obviously we've been covering that all week for you, but also the news last night that the Manhattan DA is moving forward with an indictment of a presidential candidate. Ask yourself this question regardless of what you believe about Donald Trump, regardless of how you feel about Donald Trump, regardless of whether you voted for him or not. Ask a simple question of yourself regarding this indictment. Do you believe that Donald Trump would have been indicted if he was not running for president of the United States? You answer that question honestly, and you'll begin to understand the nature of this prosecution, a political one as opposed to a criminal one. We will discuss that at 1 o'clock with Jay Sinclair on Super Talk 99.7 WT. And by the way, before I say hello to Cameron Sexton, I want to thank every single one of you that came out to Murfreesboro last night. I'm going to do that through the course of the show. It was an absolutely packed house. It was a great event. We thank you for being a part of the Super Talk 99.7 WTN family, and I'll have some special shout-outs coming up probably in the 2 o'clock hour. Right now, we welcome to the program the Speaker of the House of the General Assembly in the state of Tennessee. He is Cameron Sexton, and he joins us on these Fridays to give us a rundown and let us know what's going on in the General Assembly. And obviously, Cameron, a lot to digest out of yesterday. First and foremost, good afternoon. I hope you're well.
We're doing good. We're doing good. I mean, I think it's been a tragic week on many ends, and it started off that way. And I will say that the governor, lieutenant governor, and leaderships of the House and Senate with the administration is working on some reforms that will help protect our students in public and private schools. That's kind of getting lost in all this message with what's been going on, but we're having substantial conversations about what we want to do and how to proceed forward.
I want to start here because you guys, I believe this morning, passed legislation that would move forward in ways that you can right now to help ensure that private institutions of learning have some ability to coordinate with metro police departments in the state of Tennessee to make sure that they have the security that they need. I think it's Senate Bill 315. Is that correct?
That's correct. We passed that bill I think it was this week, and it allows private schools to do a memorandum of understanding to have SROs or in their schools. And so it was a common sense bill. Unfortunately, not all of the Democrats voted for it. I think there were 7 that voted against it. But it was something that was in the works prior to what happened Monday. And to have people not to go against allowing those private schools to make that determination is shocking.
Well, I want to be a little more pointed and get your reaction to it because apparently 3 of the individuals that created the disruption on the floor of the House of Representatives, Representative Jones, Representative Johnson, and Representative Pearson, were 3 of the individuals that voted against this additional security. Is that not correct?
No, that's correct. They were 3 who voted against it, and 3 of the 7, as well as their actions on Thursday. And they're also now going around talking about we didn't have a chance to honor the families and the individuals and so forth, which is pure rubbish. That's just blatant misrepresentation. We allowed that on Monday night. And then Representative Freeman was up in the well on Thursday morning with the whole Davidson County delegation, where he spent anywhere from, I think, 7 to 10 minutes honoring and talking about gun legislation and different things. And so, that they overplayed their hand, and now they're trying to change the narrative about what happened.
Cameron, let's talk about yesterday on the floor. Obviously, the right to petition your government for a redress of grievances is obviously a part of our Bill of Rights and the Constitution of the United States. No one begrudges individuals feeling passionately about issues and expressing that passion to the General Assembly. I'm certain that you feel the same way. But yesterday was very close to devolving into riotous behavior, if it did not, in fact, devolve into riotous behavior. Tell us, from your vantage point, what you saw and your concerns about what happened yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think you had, it started off as peaceful in the beginning. You had actions of some members on the House board, some of those that group of 3 that tried to antagonize certain members before we even started session. But, there were people there who were peaceful and who were there for the purpose they were. Unfortunately, that's not always the case when you have that big crowd. And you had those three members were going, Representative Pearson, Representative Jones, and Representative Gloria Johnson, were going in and out of the chamber the whole day, talking in the gallery to those up there, taking pictures with them, leading the chants when they were outside, when they were inside, and really trying to add energy and to what was going on. And they continued to add energy throughout. And then what we had was the circumstances when you're in the well, you have to be recognized to be in the well. We were in between bills, and they're trying to say we're in recess, which is, again, go back and look at the tape. That's not correct. And so we were in between bills, and they just stormed into the well, pulled out a bullhorn, and started shouting in the bullhorn to the people in the gallery and started doing chants and making political speeches, and even went as far on Twitter as saying they occupied the House floor, that they took back the House chamber, all things that if you go back and look at history, occupied Nashville, what Representative Jones did around the state capitol and the riots and how he led the riots in Nashville a year and a half ago. All those things were present. And what they really wanted at the end, from what we understand from people inside their own caucus, is they wanted to be arrested. They wanted the troopers to come in and arrest them so that they could walk out in handcuffs. That's the mentality that they have. Unfortunately, they weren't there really to honor the families. They were there more to make a spectacle and hopefully become part of the news, and we did not allow them to become part of the news on that day. And we continue to finish the business of what we were supposed to be there for, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to take action in the future on those three.
Well, quickly, and I have to take a short timeout, Cameron, and I appreciate your indulging me that timeout, but quickly, what was their point beyond the spectacle that you just described? Could you figure out what they were attempting to accomplish beyond disrupting the goings-on of the House of Representatives?
Well, they keep saying that their voice isn't being heard. As a member, they have voices. They're on social media. They're recognized on bills. They get to stand up. But also, when you're on the bill or you're under welcome and honoring, you have to stay on the topic. It doesn't give you free reign to talk about anything that you want. And what they routinely will do will always veer off of what the topic is and go out of order, and they get called out of order for it. And so, they're going to make every excuse they can to make themselves the victim. Just like those protesters out there yesterday raised up their hands to indicate the number 7, that there were 7 victims at Covenant School. Those protesters believe that the lady who killed those people in that school was a victim.
I want to talk to you about that in just a moment, and talk to you about moving forward, how to prevent this from ever happening again. Real quick, we'll take a short time out. It's 12:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Our conversation with Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton continues after this from Bold Patriot Brewing. 12:34, almost 12:35. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, the Matt Murphy Show in progress. Thank you for being around with us. We're at Bold Patriot Brewing Company, brought to you by Paul Winkler. We thank both of those organizations, Paul and Bold Patriot. Come on by. Normally they open up a little bit later, but they open up early for us, and they'd love to see you on this Friday. You're invited to stop by and have a beverage of your choosing, and there are a lot to choose from. We're speaking with Cameron Sexton right now, Speaker of the House, about activities going on, primarily the activity from yesterday on the floor of the House of Representatives and some of the actions that were going on outside of the floor. And Cameron, you brought up the seven fingers. I don't know what else to say except to include the individual that was responsible for the death of the six as a part of the victim group is just reprehensible. It's just gross. There's nothing else to say about it. I found it equally reprehensible that there were members, elected members of the body of the House of Representatives, that thought that they could disrupt the proceedings to the point that potentially you had to gavel out and go home. I mean, was that ever a consideration yesterday, Cameron?
Not on my end. When we were having conversations with Republican leadership and some Democrat leadership, they wanted us to adjourn and say we need to calm. And we were very clear, and I was very clear, we were not going to adjourn. We were not going to not do what we were supposed to do there that day. And I think really what they really truly wanted us to do was to adjourn, so we opened up the back doors. The people who were outside were already trying to get into the chamber, and the troopers had to form a line to keep them out. And so they really wanted to storm into the chamber. And those three members really wanted to do a sit-down. We had heard that was their goal. And with the bullhorn and everything else, it leads you to believe that what we were hearing was absolutely correct. And they took some people who were there for peaceful purposes, some people who were not, and then they tried to create an insurrection, a revolt, a rebellion against authority, against government, and they decided that they were going to occupy the House floor. It never happened before in the entire history of the state of Tennessee. So when you have something like that, you have to respond. And if you do not, then what does that tell? What's the precedent that you set for that? And the thing that bothers me the most is when the Democrats had their press conference, their leadership team said that those three individuals should have no repercussions, no discipline for their actions on the House floor.
Wait. So Democrat leadership publicly said that there should be no consequences for what happened yesterday?
Yes.
How do you respond to that?
That's ridiculous. I even think their caucus doesn't believe that, but that's what they told the media in their presser, and it's being reported everywhere. And so the AP ran with it, and that if you want to talk about society as a whole, that's why we have juvenile crime problems. That's why we have crime problems in some areas. That's why you have issues of people not being held accountable for their actions. And they took an incident this week and made it about themselves, instead of about the family and the victims, and having conversations about what we should be doing to move forward, how we can protect kids in school, how we can protect all kids in schools, whether they're in public or private. That's really not what they were there to discuss. They were there to not have decorum, disrupt the proceedings, and that's what it's about. They're going to try to make it that this was about guns and not being heard. That is not what this was about. What this was about them overtaking the House chamber, occupying the House chamber with a bullhorn, and then shouting through the bullhorn to the people in the gallery, who were then starting to do chants, which is again against House rules. And we had already warned the gallery against that earlier in the day.
What are the options for the House of Representatives in terms of discipline of these three members?
Well, there's all kinds of stuff. There's things that the body can do, and then there's things that I can do by myself. The things that I could do as speakers is remove them from committees, remove them from their offices, remove them from a variety of things. That is my ability as speaker. The body as a whole can do a vote of censure, and they can do a vote of expulsion.
Has there, to your knowledge, I don't know if you've looked in the history of this, but has there been a moment in time where a member has ever been expelled?
Yes.
Do you believe that the actions and I don't know if you can answer this yet or not, Cameron, but I'm compelled to ask the question: do you believe that the actions of the three individuals that took over that took over the House of Representatives yesterday on the floor rises to the level of expulsion?
It rises to the level at least having that as a consideration. I mean, you have to take a look at it. I'm not going to lay out my hand on what we think we're going to do and how we proceed. I'm going to continue to meet with call Republican caucus members and talk to Democrat caucus members. But it does rise to that level. Whether or not the body, that's not my individual decision. That is a vote of the body that takes 2/3 vote. If the body makes that determination, then I guess that will happen. But that will be determined at some point in the future. But what I do know is saying that these individuals who cause this disruption, who energize these protesters to turn violent, let me just tell you, when members were trying to leave to go to the restroom, you saw the videos being blocked in, being blocked where they can't get out, having to have troopers to help them to get back into the chamber. You have members who are trying to leave who are being touched and pushed and spit on and poured stuff on throughout as they were trying to get to the elevator to leave. And so to say that these people were protesting, and they're going to put up all these videos that say, look how peaceful these people were. They're not putting up all the videos. And so that's problematic. And then what you had is you had people there who were there for the right reason, who were there doing it correctly. And they monopolized their ability to be heard because they wanted to turn this into something more violent.
So I just want to be real clear, and I don't know what's going to happen down the road. Obviously, that's still a part of the discussions in your office and beyond. But the General Assembly has a process by which they can remove members, expel members for actions similar to the ones that we saw yesterday. Because what we're going to hear, Cameron, is they're elected by their own individual districts, and the other members don't have the authority, don't have the ability to supersede the will of the people. And I want to make sure that you respond to what I expect will be that defense.
Yes. When Beth Harwell was Speaker, there was a Republican member that was expelled.
Well, very good. I mean, that says enough. When do you expect that some final decisions about consequences will happen? Sometime next week?
They'll be in very short order. I think the members are thinking about the direction that they want to go, if it's a body thing or if they want it to be a speaker thing. So it will be very soon. I don't think you can go for too long and not have the consequences. So I would think it would be sooner rather than later.
And circling back to the very important issue of Monday and the shooting at Covenant School, we've seen the bill pass that would give the ability for police partnerships with private organizations, private schools in these cases, to make sure that they're secure and safe. I would expect that there are additional conversations going on, Cameron, about what else can be done at the General Assembly level to help protect our kids.
Absolutely. Protect kids in school and public, protect kids in private school, protect kids if they're on the playground, if they're walking home, protect kids in our neighborhood. And so as far as school safety, we have the governor has school safety grants in the budget that will help them. We may need to increase it. The governor's looking at adding additional SROs all across the state of Tennessee, public and private. You're looking at other means. We're looking at mental health and counselors and social workers and psychologists. We have a problem in K through 12, especially the lower grades, with individuals who have high anxiety and borderline mental health issues that we need to get help today, not later. Then you look at mental health in general. You look at this individual and say, how was she able to get through all this? And what was that like? And so there's people who want red flag laws. Well, if you have red flag laws, but you do not have the mental health treatments after the fact to help that individual, all you're doing is taking away guns. You're not providing help for that individual. And so there's things we're looking at. Florida passed some stuff. Indiana has passed some things. And we'll continue to have those conversations. There was even a Democrat on the House floor. He didn't even talk about banning guns. What he talked about is limiting maybe certain types of guns for people who had severe mental illness. And so, we're going to have those discussions. We'll see what works for the state of Tennessee. And that's what we should have been doing. And we were having those conversations. But what three individuals tried to do was to basically take over the House and take the emphasis off those families and those schools and make it about themselves. And that's very unfortunate.
Well, we look forward to final decisions on the part of your office and on the part of the body overall as to the ramifications and consequences of their actions. I appreciate your cool-headedness yesterday. A lot of us hotheads like me, Cameron, were like, throw them out, get them out of there. And I recognize very much that you recognize it's exactly the spectacle that they wanted to happen, and you did not take the bait. Thank you for your leadership yesterday and always.
Thank you.
There's Cameron Sexton, Speaker of the House. Thanks, Cameron, for your time today. We get to visit with him really on a weekly basis. A lot of times he stops by the studio to update us during the General Assembly as to what's going on, and we appreciate that time and consideration. 12:45, almost 12:46. So what I heard there was that there are real discussions going on. I don't want to get ahead of any decision-making process on the part of the Speaker. You heard it as well as me. There are real decisions being made right now as to whether or not to consider expelling the 3 members that disrupted the body yesterday. I applaud that. I think it's the right way to go. There is a mechanism by which you can expel members of the House of Representatives, and if this doesn't rise to the level of least that consideration, I don't know what does. A 2/3 vote of the body and you can be expelled. Now, this is not unique to the state of Tennessee. And simply because the voters of your district vote you into office, that does not give you carte blanche to disrupt the rules of order in the body itself. And if you do so, you have, by disrupting those rules, you have triggered various abilities that they have to boot you out of office. And if Jones and Pearson and Johnson have not done that yesterday, I don't know what you could do to do it. So I say boot them, let them howl, they will howl, and eventually the Democrats will recognize that as they are in the super minority, the only way that you get a seat at the table, the only way that you get a voice at the table is if you play by the rules of the table. Otherwise, you get booted off the table. That's the way that it goes. That's the reality of the world. And, oh, by the way, and as I said yesterday, I'll say it again, I understand that some people believe the answer to the problem that we saw on Monday is to ban guns, certain types, or all of them altogether. I disagree vehemently with those people. I believe that they are as wrong as can be. At the same time, if you want to present your ideas to the body of the House of Representatives, there's a way of doing that. And if you want to get votes to get what you want accomplished, all you have to do is go out and win elections, bud. You win enough elections in the state of Tennessee, and you get enough Democrats that agree with you on gun control measures, and by all means, you present those bills and you get them passed. But it's not going to happen because the people of Tennessee disagree with you. That's the way a representative democracy works. That's the way a representative republic works. You vote in individuals in your district, and they represent and reflect your values. And if not enough districts represent or reflect your values, you're not getting your legislation passed. No matter how much you scream, no matter how much you stomp your feet, gnash your teeth, not happening. 12:49 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Jay Sinclair at 1 o'clock. Tim Burchett at 1:30. Brink Fiddler at 2 o'clock. We're at Bold Patriot Brewing Company and would love to see you. L&L Market, just come around the back. Plenty of parking back here. Stop by, see us, and have a beverage. It's been a long week. We all need one. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN 1255. Bold Patriot Brewing Company is our location. Come on out and see us. I love getting out and about and seeing you. A regular Super Texter is here having some pizza pie and an icy cold Coca-Cola. Jason on the Super Text line has made an appearance in the house. So if you are a Super Texter and want to come by and see us, we'd love to see you. I'll have some salt later on that I'm going to be giving out. No, and I'm not kidding. Savory Spice is in the same building in L&L Market, and you guys know I love some Savory Spice, and David's bringing by some of my favorite. It's called Alderwood Smoked Sea Salt. Absolutely fabulous. He's going to have samples. So if you stop by later on, you can grab us some pizza and maybe a beer or a Coca-Cola if you've got to go back to work, and then sprinkle a little salt on that. And he also said he had some other special blends that he was going to bring by. A little later on, Super Texter 615-737-9986, 615-737-9986, 5651. I have no idea. Thanks for letting me hang on long enough to realize you're not going to take my call. Well, call in. I promise you I'll try to get to you as time allows, but we are very, very busy. They might not even be talking about me, as a matter of fact. I was telling Bell right before we came back, though, I need to, we have our Super Text line is available to us, all of the hosts. And for those that don't know, it's not like a show-specific thing. It's a station thing. So we all have the ability to look at the Super Text line anytime we want. It's just a sign-in feature. But I realized that, with the amount of – there's a lot of positivity that comes to the Super Text line, but there's some negativity, and I get that, and we appreciate that. I mean, it's different strokes for different folks. But I realize that some of the more negative – like I just had someone just drug poor Dan Mandis of Nashville's Morning News through the mud. And I'm like, my goodness gracious, I wonder what they're saying about me in the morings. I mean, I guess there's a tit-for-tat thing going on. I don't know. One way or the other, whether
I was
you want
in a little bit of a bad mood when I wrote that text, so I apologize.
I mean, I told Bell, I was like, I need to go back and because when I'm on, I would tend to believe that the Super Texters aren't going to lash out at me in the way that maybe they lash out at others. So I'm thinking, well, wow, I need to go back and look at some of the other time frames.
Everybody gets their turn.
Everybody gets a turn, pal. Sometimes you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug. Everybody gets a turn at being the bug. Adam writes in and says, the Matt Murphy Show now even saltier. I am a little bit of a salty guy. And by the way, why I have a minute or two, thank you to all of you that came out last night in Murfreesboro at Parthenon Grill. It was a packed house. I appreciate you. I know the other guys appreciate you as well. I even got my good buddy Grant came out, and as a way of honoring the show, he brought me. Bell, remember when we had our show about the penny and how I'm anti-penny?
Yes.
I'm going to show this to the Super Talk TV crowd. Grant, can you see this on your screen there? He brought me a penny shirt because I despise the penny so much. He brought me a little shirt with a penny on it and a big, oversized 1972 penny that is good for nothing, like all pennies are good for nothing. When we return, Jay Sinclair will be on to talk about the indictment of Donald Trump that came down last night. Donald Trump expected to be officially and formally charged with certain crimes next Tuesday. We'll break it down with Jay Sinclair, also Representative Tim Burchett up next hour. It's the Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. Former President Trump now facing criminal charges after a Manhattan grand jury voted to indict him. The jury was hearing evidence related to hush money payments to an adult film actress during Trump's 2016 campaign, but details remain sealed. Trump remains at his Florida estate and is expected to be arraigned Tuesday. ABC's Jay O'Brien is in West Palm Beach.
We know that the former president has to surrender. He has to go to authorities, or at least he's expected to surrender. He has to go go to an arraignment in New York. That's expected at the early portion of next week. He would travel, presumably, from here in Florida to New York for that court proceeding. If he were to refuse to surrender, Governor Ron DeSantis here in Florida has said he would not cooperate with any kind of extradition request, but that is not something that New York officials have requested, and it's not something that Trump has indicated he would not do, meaning he's indicated that he would surrender to New York authorities.
In Mississippi, President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden are surveying the damage and rolling fork, all caused by last weekend's deadly tornado outbreak. The president, after seeing some of the destruction.
The thing that really is always amazed me in all the tornadoes I've been to of late is that you have one house standing, and one house from here to the wall totally destroyed.
He's pledged more aid. 21 people died. A veteran employee of San Jose Police Officers Association now facing drug allegations.
Joanne Segovia is the executive director of the San Jose Police Officers Association. Now she's charged with attempting to import illegal synthetic opioids from overseas, including fentanyl. Federal prosecutors allege she was part of a scheme to distribute the drugs nationwide. Sean Pritchard is president of the Police Officers Association.
Shocked. Became saddened.
Investigators allege 65-year-old Segovia used her personal and office computers to order drugs and agreed to distribute them elsewhere in the U.S.
ABC's Alex Stone reporting. You're listening to ABC News.
Matt Murphy Show in progress this Friday, March 31st. It's our episode 310 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We're also live on Talk TV. That is YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. And we thank you for being a part of our day. And we thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. We're at Bold Patriot Brewing Company, brought to you by Paul Winkler. We thank Bold Patriot, and we thank Paul Winkler for allowing us to get out and about. Come by and see us. David's here from Savory Spice. He's giving out samples of Alderwood smoked sea salt, my favorite, although he just gave me some of this Maria rub that is pretty darn good. So he's here. I'm here. Want you I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but Pamela Furr's in the house as well. So Pamela's here. All of you firefighters out in Murfreesboro of interest to that. I don't know how long she's going to be here, but, be safe as you travel. And we also, if I'm not mistaken, have our man. Let's do it, Bell K. It is time for Friday. Come on, Bell.
Good morning, Americans. It's Friday.
106, an opportunity for us to speak with our man, Jay Sinclair, and we're going to do so in mere moments. Once we get hooked up with him on the line, we will reintroduce you to my good friend, Tennessee native, legal expert, and all-around good guy, Jay Sinclair. He'll be along in just a moment, and Bell will alert me as to when we have those phone lines all hooked up. Ann says, I texted all morning, and I give up. You're still my favorite. Aw. Well, that's very sweet, Ann. I appreciate that. It's crazy how people say the right doesn't like transgender people, but the thing is transgender people don't like themselves. They have to be someone else. Crazy how that works. Look, I'm all about allowing people to live a life of their own choosing in the United States of America. That's the beauty of this country, is that I can vehemently disagree with the manner in which you live your life, but also vehemently defend your ability to live a life of your choosing. But that all stops when you begin denying rights on other people. And I said last night on the broadcast from Parthenon Grill, and I'll say it again, that I believe that there is, obviously, there is gender dysphoria. There are people that feel as if they were born in the wrong body from a sex perspective. But I also think that we have a generation of young people that, based on a certain level of unhappiness, they have been convinced by people that they can end the unhappiness and be happy if they switch genders. And
I'm so sorry. He's ready.
That is not an answer to all of your problems. And it does not create this blissful euphoria by which you're never going to be unhappy again. And sadly, I think a lot of people, especially in their teenage years, believe that. All right, so it's time for our good friend. We've already played your intro, Jay, but I didn't realize you weren't on the line when we played it. Jay Sinclair joins us.
Americans.
Oh, well, let's do it again. Why not?
Friday.
It is. It's Friday. It's not morning. It's 1:08 in the afternoon, but, 1 out of 2 ain't bad. Jay Sinclair, our good friend and legal expert, joining us on the show to lend us his expert opinion on everything that's going on in New York and beyond. What's up, Jay? How are you?
Matt, I think if you changed over to a University of Tennessee football fan, you would solve all the problems in your life, and you would be so much happier and better. You need to be trans-footballed.
Oh, no. There's people in the audience at Bold Patriot agreeing with you. Ooh, yucky. No. Oh. Who do y'all play first week? I'll give it a go first week this football season.
I'm not playing. Last time I did this game, I ended up jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. I'm never doing that again, man. I saw how that movie ended.
It's been a pretty good run as a Georgia fan last couple of years, I'll admit to you. So I'm gonna stick with my football gender of my choosing. I think I said that right. Jay, yesterday it came down. I was convinced that they were trying to drag this out to watch it slowly fade away, but no. Alvin Bragg has indicted Donald Trump, but we expect – I don't know that we've seen the particulars, but we expect – I think Trump's people said they're going to charge him with 34 separate charges. I don't know where they come up with that figure. Maybe you've done the research to know, but what do you make of all of this?
Well, I've been thinking about it a lot, Matt, and to me, here's the first point, and I think the most important point. Is this politically motivated, right? That's the question everybody's asking. So I ask myself this question. If Trump were not running for president, would he have been charged with this crime? And in my mind, the answer to that is very clearly no. No, he would not have been charged with it. And the determinative fact, if he had come in and said, you know what, I'm not running again, I'm too old, I do not believe they would charge him with this crime. And that is it's sad is not a strong enough word, Matt. It is it will say it's the best word I can come up with at the moment. So this is a sad day for the United States of America. We have become a third world country.
You know, Jay, I know that you're a busy man, and I have a feeling that you were not able to listen to my first hour of the show. But I also know that we've been friends for 20 years, and I've learned a lot from listening to you in a golf cart for 4 hours per day when we have these in-depth discussions about legal matters in the law. And I said last hour, I said, if you want to understand – I'm not making this up. I said, if you want to understand this case from start to finish, ask yourself one question, and that is – would Donald Trump be indicted were he not running for president of the United States? I mean, that it really does, regardless of what you think about Trump. If you answer that question honestly from your guts, I think you have all the answer you need about the political motivations behind this case.
Dang, you're smart, man.
I just hang out with smart people.
Isn't that funny that we totally independently came to that same
to the exact same question? I'm sitting here smiling as you were saying it. I was like, wow, I have learned a lot from my man Jay Sinclair because without the political motivation behind him, I don't think there's any way. And I was trying to explain it to a group last night exactly how they bent over backwards to make this work, because you understand statute of limitations more than most people in the United States of America based on your background. And the basic charge that he misrepresented money that went out ultimately to Stormy Daniels, that's beyond the statute of limitations, right? So you have to tie that together with some other thing.
That's right. Many years beyond the statute of limitations. And here's the other part of it, too, man. I mean, well, first of all, let me say this. We don't know what he's been charged with, and I think that's an important point. The indictment is sealed. No one knows. The public doesn't know. And so I'm not going to speculate too much about that, man, because we just don't know. But what the leaks have said that it's going to be about an accounting entry into the books of financial books of either his company or his campaign. I will bet you pigs to polecats that Donald Trump did not enter in that accounting that number into an accounting spreadsheet. I will bet you pigs to polecats he doesn't know who did. And I'll bet you pigs to polecats he didn't tell anybody what account to charge this to. Right? I mean, that's what this whole thing's about, is they're saying, well, you claimed it as a business expense when it really wasn't. I don't believe they have any evidence that he knew that that's how that accounting was done. But, you know, we'll just see what happens.
Well, and I know some listening, maybe non-Trump supporters listening, don't want to believe the ramifications are as significant as you presented them. But if we live in a country where criminal prosecutions are decided based on who's running for president and who we want to be president and who we don't want to be president and who we want to prevent from running for president, I mean, I don't think you're overstating the case at all those are the actions of third world countries and tin-pot dictatorships.
Well, and the deal is you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. I mean, this won't be the last time, man. It won't be the last time. They'll keep going.
Well, because sadly, a lot of people will start arguing, Jay, that, hey, they did – because I try to argue we need to be better than them, right? You know, the police officer needs to be better than the criminal, obviously, and we need to be better than the people that are trying to do this. But there are some that say, hey, we need to get down there and we need to fight by these rules that they started it, so we're going to finish it.
You know, Andy, you know how you fight fire?
with a hose. Did he say with a hose?
No, Andy, you fight fire with fire. Andy, you know how you fight fire? With a hose.
With a hose.
You want to use a hose, but no, there's a lot of people, Barney Fife included, that says you fight fire with fire. No, it's. I'm afraid we have gone. We're now down the slope. We'll see how slippery it is, man. And, you know, stuff like this goes on in a little two-horse town. My hometown of Dunlap, Tennessee, you know, the world's founded a little bit, but when I was there's 2,000 people. You had two people running for mayor or chief of police. Yeah, one of them might, you know, swear to warrant against the other one. Like small-town politics. I mean, I get it. But my word, we're talking about the most powerful position in the world. Mm-hmm. And now they're doing it like that.
Yeah, when I first came to the state of Alabama, I realized that there was a piece of legislation on the books that was inexplicable to me until it got explained to me. And it was a law that prevented any sheriff in the state of Alabama from pulling over, detaining, or arresting any state lawmaker in Alabama during session. And I thought, well, my goodness, what do they think, that the laws don't apply to them, yada, yada, yada. Well, come to find out, this law was passed because influential politicians were paying off local sheriffs to pull over other politicians to detain them so they couldn't get to a vote.
Third world countries.
And now it's happening to the President of the United States.
No, I mean, it's one thing we can joke about it when it's in some little two-horse town, you know, out in rural the south of the States. But this is the President of the United States, man. It's heartbreak. Frankly, it's heartbreaking.
What likelihood would you give that once this gets before a judge? I understand where we're talking about, Jay. What likelihood is there that the judge looks at this and says, nope, not doing it? Throwing it out.
See, there's no way I can give you an answer to that question, man, because I haven't seen the indictment, right?
Right.
I cannot answer that until we see the indictment. But I can explain to you what the process will be. That once he's indicted, they will file a motion to dismiss, which they have the right to do, and so it'll be heard by a judge. It doesn't automatically go to trial. The legal system has filters in it. And once charges get filed, the defendant can move to dismiss it. The judge, the standard that will apply, man, is the judge will look at the charge, the indictment. He has to accept as true the facts that are in there. But the argument will be, even if all these facts are true, this is not a crime. Even accept all this is true, it's not a crime. And then the judge can dismiss that. If he doesn't dismiss it, and if the judge dismisses it, the state really can't appeal. I mean, that's the end of it.
Right.
If he doesn't dismiss it, Trump can appeal it up within the New York court system, all the way up to the final court up there. I think it's actually the Court of Appeals. It's odd. In New York, the first level court is called the Supreme Court, man. God, Yankees are odd. They're like rats.
Well,
but when all that's done, you know, they could try to appeal it to the Supreme Court, but they have to raise constitutional issues there. Right? They can't just the Supreme Court doesn't have authority to interpret state law. But so this will drag out. I do not believe this will be over once the primaries begin. That's about a year away.
Yeah, less than a
year. I predict this will drag out for at least a year, and you know it could still be pending when the election happens.
And isn't that the point? Right.
Well, I don't know. See, now this is not my area of expertise. That's your area and other people's. I don't I don't claim to be a political expert. I'm just a country lawyer, man. But see, I don't know if they just want it hanging or if they want a hanging. I mean, to me, I would no, they want to convict him before the election. But I don't know. Maybe they think it's better to just have him dangling in the breeze.
What's the line that you taught me years ago? Oh, it's from a movie. We're going to
we're going to give you a fair trial followed by a first-class hanging.
Well, that's what they're trying to do with Donald Trump. Jay's with us, 120. Hang in there, Jay. We'll take a short time out and be back in a moment. And several of you have asked questions about the process here, and I'll try to get Jay to explain it to us because there seem to be conflating state laws and federal laws, and there are several people asking Jay, how can they do that? How can they take a state law and then tie a federal law to it, even when the federal government's declined to charge Trump on those election charges? We'll do that next. It's 121 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN from Bold Patriot Brewing Company. Come see us. Hi there. 124 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I was just, I'm just working the room. I was talking to the folks. Natisha Brooks, candidate for mayor, is in the house at Bold Patriot Brewing Company. Y'all come by and say hello to Natisha. I don't know of another conservative in the race for mayor in the city of Nashville. And so if you are a conservative and you live in Davidson County, here's your opportunity to talk to the lone conservative in the race, at least as far as I know. Y'all tell me another one. It ain't Jeff Yarborough. I promise you that. It ain't Fran Bush. It ain't Freddie O'Connell. I hear Heidi Campbell's going to jump in. It's not her either. So Natisha, I know she's conservative, and she's running for mayor of Nashville. So she's in the house today, and we appreciate her. Jay Sinclair is also in the house with us talking about the indictment of Donald Trump, what it will mean from a legal perspective and what the process is from a legal perspective. And Jay, there's confusion, and I admit that I'm among those confused. And you're my go-to guy to lean on when it comes to this. When we're talking about state charges and statute of limitations, and then how does it rise to the level of a felony? You do that, and they're tying together a federal charge. Well, I thought you had to go to federal court in order to charge somebody with a federal crime. What am I missing here, Jay?
You're not missing a thing. Well, I'll tell you what we're missing. We're missing the indictment there.
Well, you're right. You're right.
Right, exactly. And I get it. Everybody wants to go ahead and analyze it and whatnot. No, we got to wait till we get the indictment because we don't know right now. We got a pig in a poke. And but once we get the indictment, then I'll study it carefully, and maybe we'll have that by next Friday, and then we can go into that in depth. But we don't know, man. We don't know what the charges are. They may not have anything to do with federal. We don't know.
Well, I mean, obviously it remains to be seen, and clearly, I mean, the question that you asked at the beginning of the conversation is the most pertinent one in my estimation, and that is, whether or not if Donald Trump were not running for president of the United States, any and all of this would still be happening, and I think most reasonable people would come to the same conclusion about that.
No, and what I keep hearing in the press is that, this is unprecedented. It's the first time a former president has been charged with a crime. That's not the important point, man. This is the first time. I don't know. We ought to see. We'll go back in history. Maybe it has happened. I don't know about it, and that's why I don't say it. But that's not what this is about. It's not a former president. A current candidate for the president of the United States is being charged with a crime. That's what's so remarkable about this.
Well, that's right, and
it's to interfere with the election. It's to interfere with the election.
Well, and Ron DeSantis came out last night, and I don't know. I mean, I guess this is the only thing that he could say about the matter because Donald Trump apparently spends most of his time in Florida. And so the question was posed to Ron DeSantis, who is expected to be a political rival against Trump, whether or not he would allow for extradition to New York. And he said no, he's not having anything to do with any of this. He's kind of getting his hands off of all of that. I guess that process is that once the indictment comes out, that Trump, just turns himself in, I guess.
No, here's what we were talking about this the other day. About he's such a carnival barker, Trump is, and he can play the press better than any politician I've ever seen, even now, except maybe Reagan. I mean, Reagan was just brilliant at it, but Trump's pretty good. He will make this a spectacle. There's no telling what he's going to do, man. But it'll be very public. He'll go up there in a limo and get out, and have his Social Security. You wait. And he'll probably have a dais up there, and give a speech. And, he'll make it a big media event. That's what he does. If I'm wrong on this, I'll buy you.
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong.
He'll make a big spectacle about it. And I can see him now holding his arms out. Here, do you want to handcuff me? Do you think you're going to handle? We got 10 Secret Service agents back here. Do you think you need to handcuff me? Go ahead, handcuff me. Handcuff me right now. I want you to handcuff me. It'd be huge.
Oh man,
that was the biggest handcuffs ever.
Well, and I've said for a long time that the two things above all else, I mean, the Democrats got the media in their back pocket, But what we have going for us beyond all else, two factors. One, Democrats always overplay their hand. If they think they have a winning hand, they overplay it. And two, they think the American people are dumb. And they think they can con the American people into believing in the legitimacy of these charges. And I just don't see the American people are buying into it, especially conservatives who Trump has been telling all along, they got it in for me, and now they're just proving him right again.
No, well, absolutely. And you said it from the very beginning, right? We were back when all that. He's magnesium, I think it was your thing in the first 30, 60 days. I mean, burns white hot, and, who knows how long it'll be before he burns out. But they've been after him and attacking him, man, from day one before he was ever even elected. It's remarkable. I cannot think of any other politician ever in the history of the United States that has been attacked as much as he has.
Well, if you want to get a good laugh this afternoon, Jay, go ahead and look up the New York Post and read their article about how Trump could be elected president of the United States and govern as president of the United States from prison.
Oh, no, absolutely. 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 No question about it. And then we are a third world country.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess so. Jay, you know how much I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll do it again next Friday, friend.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, 131 Super Talk 99.7 WTN from Bold Patriot Brewing. Fiddling up a little bit. Come on out and see us in a moment. Representative Tim Burchett joins the show. Tim has gotten a lot of media attention based on several comments that he made in Washington, D.C. that I happen to agree with. We'll talk to the congressman about these in just a moment. From Bold Patriot, it's the Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is the Matt Murphy Show. We continue. From Bold Patriot Brewing Company, come and see us. I mean, it's such a blend of happiness as we see folks we haven't seen in a while. You know, David from Savory Spice came down. He's giving out spice samples. Natisha Brooks running for mayor. You got all of that going on, just a family atmosphere, eating, having some beer. And then just the horrible tragedy of what happened earlier in the week. It's a constant reminder of that tragedy. I just spoke to a former congressional 5th District candidate, Timothy Lee, who also works with the fire department, and he talked about his involvement. We were just discussing off air his involvement in transporting some of the victims from Monday's tragedy to the hospital, and it just is a reminder of how gut-wrenching it is, not just for the families. Obviously, they're first in our minds, first in our thoughts, first in our prayers, but also for the responders, the first responders, the firefighters, EMTs, et cetera, that responded to the tragedy. Hey, Belle, I hate to produce on air, but if you don't have a number, I'm sorry, I did not appropriately communicate with you. I'll find Rachel's number, and I'll get her the I think, he's supposed to we had him calling us. Tim Burchett was planning on calling us, but I'll give her the super text line so that she can pass that along to him, and I'll do so. I'm gonna share that with Rachel. So that she could pass that along to Congressman Tim Burchett, who's expected to be with us coming up in the next couple of minutes. While we're waiting, thank you, Paul Winkler. Paul Winkler saying bye, having a little lunch, and taking off, getting to some more appointments. He is one of the reasons that we're here at Bold Patriot Brewing Company today, and I appreciate Paul and everything that he does for us. While we're anticipating that, and I've sent that number to Rachel, and hopefully she can forward it to Tim. This is one of the reasons we want to talk to Tim Burchett. So 2 cuts, so we can start with 1 and go to 2. That seems the best way to do this. Tim Burchett was asked earlier this week what, if anything, we could do regarding gun violence, particularly the issue happening Monday at the Covenant School. Here was Tim Burchett's response. Cut 1, go.
We can pass all the laws we want, but somebody's going to 3D print a book. Somebody's going to get ammonium nitrate like they did in Oklahoma and Timothy McVeigh. Completely evil. Didn't have a assault weapon, whatever that is, whatever the new definition of that is. Didn't have any of that, and that's what we're going to have. The laws don't work. Until people change their hearts, we're not going to see a change.
It seems pretty straightforward and common sense, but Tim Burchett then went on to continue his response with regard to what, if anything, could be done out of Washington, D.C. Cut 2, go.
We've got evil in this country, and everybody just needs to tone down the rhetoric a little bit, because all that does is gin it up in both sides, and then they point the finger and nothing happens. Because if you think Washington's going to fix this problem, you're wrong. They're not going to fix this problem. They are the problem.
It doesn't concern you that other countries don't have this level of gun violence?
Other countries don't have our freedom either.
Can someone tell me, because Burchett has been plastered all over every liberal media outlet all week long for what you just heard. Now, they're also accusing him of being insensitive to parents' needs because he was asked a question involving his daughter. He said, well, what about the parents of kids like your daughter who want to be safe? And he said, well, my daughter is homeschooled. So he answered directly the question asked of him with regard to that. Now, some would say, oh, well, Tim's being tone deaf. But explain to me how he's wrong. The government of the United States of America is not going to solve the evil that lives in the heart of some men and some women, sadly. The government is not going to solve some of the mental illness issues that have to be present in order for someone to walk into a school and slaughter 9-year-old children. The government of the United States of America is not going to solve those immoral and unspiritual, godless hearts. And even if, and Burchett's ultimate point was, and he did not go here, but I will, even if I acquiesce to the point you're trying to make and accepted the idea of a ban on whatever you're defining as assault weapons today, if I accepted that, your suggestion is that would solve these issues. Well, in Michigan State, when the gunman got on the campus of Michigan State and did his business, he did his business with handguns. Well, what about this? The basic statistic, doesn't take a lot to look this up, that 97% of all gun-related deaths in the United States of America are the result of handguns. This is not a matter of long guns. They claim that that's what would solve the issue. They know very well it's not. It's just a step along the way to secure your guns and to prevent your ability from defending yourself in the event that a tragedy visits you on your doorstep. Burchett is exactly correct. And those that want to believe that Washington, D.C. can solve these issues for us are going to be, two things. One, they're wrong. And two, not only are they wrong, in solving it, you are trampling on the rights of law-abiding citizens. I said yesterday, and I don't admit to be the one that first came up with this analogy, but I think it is an analogy that is dead on point, that suggesting that law-abiding gun owners should give up their guns because some gun owners do evil things with their guns is akin to suggesting that men should get castrated because some men rape women. Well, I want you to get castrated because other men – well, I'm not going to rape anyone. Exactly. Nor am I going to commit evil acts of death, murder, and mayhem with my guns that I have in my home. So why would you suggest that I need to give up my guns from my home because others are doing evil with theirs? And embedded in the suggestion is a concept that guns cannot be used for good. And that is, as we've talked about for many years, that is one of the biggest lies that the liberal media has told to the American people, and particularly the youth of America, and they have won a lot of hearts and minds over in the American youth culture on that point, that guns are bad and they're always bad. I mean, we saw them yesterday at the Tennessee legislature when they attempted to overrun the House of Representatives, demanding gun control, demanding that we ban weapons. Well, you know what? It would not solve the issues that you claim it would. So I agree with Representative Tim Burchett, who joins us right now on the show to talk a little further about where we can potentially solve some of these issues. It's always good to speak to the representative. Tim, good afternoon. Thank you for being on with us today.
Hey, it's always a pleasure. Sorry for the delay.
No, it's on us as well. We apologize, but we did play some of the comments that you made earlier in the week that are obviously getting a lot of play on liberal talking head networks who want to suggest that what you said is somehow not correct, but I can't find fault in it at all. Your suggestion that these issues will not be solved in Washington, D.C. is dead on target. Speak a little more about that, Tim. Uh-oh. Are you there, Tim?
I got you. I'm still here. Yeah, I'm here. Okay. I'm sorry.
No. I'm just, just the idea that, some want to look to Washington, D.C. for the solution to all of our issues. Most of the people that are looking that way are demanding that you guys do something about quote-unquote gun control, which is absurd considering that almost 98% of the gun deaths that happen in the United States of America happen at the hands of handguns and not these long guns that they so desperately want to ban. Just speak a little further about your belief, and I share it, that these solutions cannot be found in Washington.
Well, I think what really ticked them off was I said we need to revive this country. They're mad. They're mad about Jesus. They don't want me bringing that up, and I understand that. And I wasn't saying ordaining a religion in this country or anything, but I just said we need revival, and they don't like that. The liberal media doesn't be, The media doesn't like that. The Rolling Stone magazines and all these other publications that seem to think that they are the moral compass of this country, and we're not going to change people's hearts with legislation, and we're not. We've tried that. We've outlawed the hate. We've outlawed all this and that. Everything that horrible person did to those innocent people in Nashville was illegal. It was illegal, and we're not going to change people's hearts, and we're going to work. I met with the Democrats I met with the Democrats, 6 Democrats the other day, yesterday, I guess it was. I'm losing my days here. But I met with them, and we're trying to find some common ground. We need to look at mental health and things like that and things that we can address. And many of them confided in me that said, you're right. Said, but politically, this is what we need to do. And so, that's just where we are as a country. And there's a lot of hate and division. And frankly, there's just a lot of evil people in this world. And they're going to do evil things. And you're not going to legislate them out. They'll, look at Timothy McVeigh, one of the largest mass murderers in this country. And yet he went to a ag feed store and bought ammonium nitrate and diesel and created a bomb and killed over 100 people. And so, I was in the legislature in Nashville when that happened. I remembered people brought legislation wanting to regulate and outlaw ammonium nitrate, things like that. And it just, we're not going to change people's hearts. We really need to pray for revival and get back to where we once were as a nation.
Well, well spoken. Congressman Tim Burchett is with us, talking about the tragedy that happened Monday at the Covenant School, and you bring up an excellent point. As far as I remember, that school, that property was a no-gun zone, and the suggestion that making something illegal would stop criminal behavior from happening, well, if that were true, then that person never would have committed this heinous evil assault on these children and these staff members as a result of it being a no-gun zone, right?
Absolutely. And I totally resent the left's movement to make this some sort of a transgender. She was being attacked because she was a transgender or something, and then she just lashed out. That's sort of the movement you're seeing in a lot of the liberal, the traditional media, if you will. The legacy media is what some people call it. And I just resent that at every step of the way.
Well, and they're coming after you too, Tim. I mean, they want to come after you because, I mean, you answered. I saw, and I'm wondering if you had to do it over again, if you might have answered it a little differently. I don't think you did anything wrong, and I know you. I understand exactly where you're coming from. When the reporter said, well, what about kids like yours? And you said, well, my kids are homeschooled, so we don't have that issue.
I said, they said, what about your daughter when she gets on the school bus? And I said, my daughter, we homeschool my daughter, so that really doesn't apply. I mean, it doesn't apply to us. But then I went on to say I worry about her other places. I mean, these films are all edited, as you know. They're not. They don't do that when they're interviewing some of my very far left wing friends, but they do it on people like me, and that's just what they do. I'd say consider the source, because they're not. They want to sow decisiveness and perpetuate these myths, and that's what they do, because they control the media. And people hear it or they see it, and they don't see the context in which it was taken. So yeah, if I had to do it all over again, I just probably wouldn't have done the interview, but it was on my heart, and I truly believe our country is sick, and we need help. And Republicans and Democrats are not going to solve it.
So when we do talk about mental health issues, that it gets tricky, as you well know, because it's a tricky thing to deny individuals their rights based on something we think they might do. And that's where the devil is in the details about what we can potentially do to identify some of these individuals that have mental illness and prevent them from getting their hands on weapons that they can use for mass murder.
Absolutely. And that's what I talked about with some of my Democrat friends about, if they're, there's been talk of a national registry, and I really don't know how that would look because of civil liberty issues, because we have those certain protections under the law and HIPAA protections, which are in there for a good reason. And then if there was I had a respected member of law enforcement said, if we had a national registry of some sort that would show who is mentally ill and who isn't, and then we could filter those out. But there again, as I've said many times, evil people are going to do evil things. So let's figure out things we can agree on, and let's move towards that. And that's what and I left it with my Democrat friends at that, and because we all agreed that we needed to do something, that mental health was a good starting spot, and that's where we left it.
Tim, thank you for spending a little time with us. Thank you for offering your thoughts both on the gun piece and the mental health piece. Any final thoughts about Monday? And I mean, I know your father, your representative, you're a human being, and it's been an incredible week. It's been a gut-wrenching week. Any final thoughts about it?
Yes, sir. I would just ask people to pray for the heart and soul of our country.
That's really, really well said. Succinct to the point, and I think desperately needed in this time. Congressman, thank you so much. We'll talk again soon, Tim. There's Tim Burchett joining us for a few moments. It's 1:52. We wrap up this hour. Coming up next hour, a conversation. I know it's Friday, and I want to let these things go as much as you do. We're out at Bold Patriot Brewing Company. Maybe we can do that at 3 o'clock. But coming up in the next hour, we will revisit Monday and talk about how to make our places of business, our schools, our churches more secure as best we can. We'll do so with Brink Fiddler. That's on the way, coming up at 2 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. Police in New York City preparing for next week's court hearing when former President Trump is expected to appear for his arraignment. The Manhattan grand jury voted to indict Trump yesterday. The jury was hearing evidence related to hush money payments to adult film actress Stormy Daniels during his 2016 campaign. ABC's Aaron Katersky says details of the indictment are sealed until the arraignment.
It's all going to be highly choreographed. The only thing we know for certain is that the former president will appear in a courtroom at this building behind me to enter a plea, likely of not guilty. And at that point, we'll know the charges. The indictment will be unsealed. Whether the former president has to go through all the formalities of processing like fingerprinting and the taking of a mugshot, we're not sure. His attorney, though, says he will not be handcuffed when he appears here like other criminal defendants are.
The former president calls the indictment political persecution. Meantime, President Biden and members of his administration are not commenting on the case. The president in Mississippi today with First Lady Jill Biden getting a firsthand look at all the destruction caused by the deadly tornado outbreak last weekend. He announced the federal government will cover 100% of costs of cleanup and recovery for the next month.
The most important thing is we got to let people know there's reason for them to have hope. Because this is especially the people who lost somebody.
21 people died across the state. Finland clears another hurdle, the final one to join the NATO alliance.
All NATO nations must unanimously approve any newcomer. When it comes to Finland, Turkey was the last holdout, accusing the Nordic nation of harboring Kurdish militants. Turkey's parliament finally approving Finland's bid to join the military alliance, though Sweden is still being blocked. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg calling for a rapid conclusion of Sweden's NATO ratification. Inez de la Quatera, ABC News. At the Foreign Desk.
You're listening to ABC News.
It is the Matt Murphy Show, Super Talk 99.7, WTN. Bold Patriot Brewing is our location. Swing by and say hello. David is with Savory Spice, and he says if you come in and ask for the Alderwood smoked sea salt, which I'm absolutely obsessed with from Savory Spice, he's got samples for you, and it is tip-top. Or at least I thought it was tip-top. What was the – what? Hey, David, what's the name of that other stuff you gave me? The Santa Maria spicing, the spice with the salt in it is pretty darn good, too. So he's here. Bold Patriot's here. Paul Winkler is the kind of the founder of the feast. He's giving us the ability to be here, and we would love to see you stop by. And, heck, you never know. I might buy you a beer. I owe this guy 1 or 2 or 8 if the circumstances present themselves, because he's meant a lot to me, helping me get to know the city of Nashville, helping me understand a lot of things that go on and how to try to prevent the bad guys from doing bad things. And obviously he's a name that we've spoken about quite a bit this week, sadly for all the wrong reasons. Many of you know that Brink Fiddler is owner of Defense Systems. He is one of the sponsors of my show and Super Talk 99.7 WTN. But I'm proud to tell you over the 16 months that I've been in Nashville, I consider him a friend. I hope he feels the same way. And he joins us to talk about this week, and I'm sad that we have to, but we do. Hey, Brink.
Yeah. Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me.
You provided, as you do with so many different churches, so many different schools, you provided consultation and training for the Covenant School.
That's right. Last year. Yep.
Tell me, was it the similar type of training that we went through at Cumulus Nashville? I mean, that's kind of your standard training that you provide?
Yeah, they did the same program you guys did. The only thing we adjust for schools and only certain age groups at schools is the really young ones. We prefer you don't try and evac them just because, like, if you've ever seen a fire drill with 3-year-olds, it's really cute, right? But imagine
it's ineffective.
Right, so we prefer they lock those down. But besides that, yeah, it was the same program you guys went through. You know, it doesn't matter if we're at a church or a school or corporation or whatever organization type there is. Our curriculum is our curriculum for a reason, because it's designed to be, yes, we talk about your building and your neighborhood specifically, but it's designed to be applicable not just like for you guys, not just at Cumulus, but like when you're on your way home and you stop at Walmart or wherever. Like, we want you to take that same knowledge set and apply it wherever you are. So I know it's a really long answer to your question.
No. I think it's important because I talk about you so much. I think sometimes I get ahead of my skis and I forget that new listeners come in. They're not aware of kind of what you try to do. Explain to people what you do when you get a call from a school, from a church, from a business owner, and they say, hey, we want you to come in. We want you to train us up. How do you describe the training session to people?
The first thing we start with is a walkthrough of the facility. Well, we sit down with you and ask questions and make sure that you understand, like, the product you're going to get and make sure we're a good fit for you. And we've never had a situation where it wasn't. But we ask a few questions, and then we do a walkthrough of your facility to look at certain things, aspects of your floor plan, building materials, all that kind of stuff, physical security that's existing. We ask about, existing training, all that kind of stuff. And then we use that information we gather during the walkthrough to build your training program where it's. So we need your floor plan because we mark that and talk about spaces in your building. We also do our own aerial shots, unless we're in restricted airspace, which that's kind of a pain sometimes. But we do our own aerial shots because we like to talk about if you make it out of the building, where do you go and why? Like why certain directions are bad and certain directions are good. And that was never more applicable than it was on Monday.
You've told me this, and let's talk about it, that one of the areas that you recommended the Covenant School staff and students go to would be toward the fire station, which is apparently where they went. Is that not right?
Yeah, but I want to explain why. It's not because there's a fire hall there. The kind of north side of the building and the fire hall is kind of on the west side of the building. When you come out that side of the building, the tree line is not is not all that far before you can get to cover and concealment. The other two ways are a long way. All right, so,
open field.
Yes, and so we explained why that's bad. There's not cover and concealment out there. So the two areas we talked about for them are west and down the woods to the fire hall because you're going to get immediate help, and then the other direction was north through the woods to Hillsborough Road. And teachers understand that, like, it's really heart-wrenching for you to tell them to run out in the middle of the road with a bunch of kids. But I tell them this is the exception. This is when you can't do that because you're going to get help. And like it or not, this is Tennessee, and like every third car has a gun in it. So I said you're going to have to either, if you go this way, it's there. If you go Hillsborough Road, you're going to have to run out the road and get help. And that's exactly what happened. I'm sure you've probably seen the footage. But let me pause here for a minute because we haven't talked about this yet. And I know we will, but this is a great opportunity to do that. I wasn't there on Monday. Right, those teachers were there on Monday. Like I understand they had training and I gave them tools, but I wasn't there to implement it. They did under an extreme amount of stress while somebody's trying to murder them and their kids, and they're the story here. Because I've seen cops fail who've had all the training in the world in the moment, right? Like just go to crap, right? And these teachers crushed it. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that.
There's a lot to dissect and a lot to get into. I know that you have had an opportunity to walk the hallways of the Covenant School in the aftermath of the event to try to do something of an after effect and what happened and how it happened, and that's very important to you. Why was that so important to you?
It was hard for me. I mean, let me be clear. I mean, I did a walkthrough of the crime scene with homicide. The victims obviously aren't there anymore, but everything else is still there, and I'll just leave it there. And I knew a couple of those victims, so I knew what I was walking into, and I really went back and forth because I knew it was going to be very difficult for me, and it still is. I'm working through it, but I'm so dedicated to understanding these and studying them and all that, and this is the first time that my curriculum has been tested. Okay, so I had to know every detail of what happened in there, and I knew from talking to people, but I had to see it myself to understand it and understand. Is there a hole in it? Do I need to change something? So that's how, to me, I was able to compartmentalize and make it just about work. Was if I didn't go in there and there was something in there for me to learn to make this program better that could affect somebody's life down the road, that's how I was able to do it. But it still was horrendous.
If you have any questions for Brink that I'm not thinking of during the course of this hour, you're invited to super text those questions to us at 615-737-9986, and I'll vet through those and try to get to some of the questions. You told me when we spoke briefly via phone earlier in the week let me back up. You invited me out to a testing session that you were doing for a product that is called Defense Light, and I think it's one of a number of products that you've tested or seen tested that is a protective barrier film, if you will, that would go over pre-existing windows, not just for commercial facilities or schools or churches, but residences too, if you chose, that would prevent individuals from breaching. And we watched it, and you gave us sledgehammers, and we banged on this thing. I mean, you fired, 5.56 rounds into the thing, and it went through. And I asked you the question, I forget if it was on or off air, that, sadly, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, but if that barrier had been on those glasses, she wouldn't have gotten in there.
Right. Very, very likely, unless a human failed and opened the door and she slid in or something. But yeah, to prevent forced entry protection for glass is out there. And she showed up with guns and ammo, not tools. And so she'd have been able to shoot through. Well, some of it, as you saw, are bulletproof too. Those were super expensive. But the non-bulletproof stuff, you
can shoot through it, but you can't breach it easily.
Physically getting through is going to be very difficult. It's going to take minutes, not seconds, as you experienced, and I did too. I mean, we hit that thing with
everything.
A belt-fed machine gun. I mean, sledgehammers, breaking rakes, all of it. So, yes, it's very effective. And I know for a fact that this school was in discussions around doing that. It was in their plan and in their working budget. It just hadn't been done.
Because, like we talk about all the time, you see these things happening elsewhere, and when I'm talking about defense systems, I say, look, hope is not a plan. I mean, every time one of these things happens, you always have an interview with somebody saying, I never thought it would happen to us. And sadly, it's happening more and more often, and we can get into some of that too. But what do you feel like went right? I mean, we know what went wrong starting with a mentally disturbed person that was willing to kill children and staff members. What went right? Talk about the teachers.
A lot. And some of it I still can't get into because it's still an open homicide investigation, right? But I can tell you that the teachers, we only teach the evade piece or evacuate, right? If you know the approximate location of the threat and it's safe to do that. And several groups, based on the location of the gunfire and where they were located, felt like it was safe to do that, and they did it, and they did it effectively, and they got out of there. The rest of them didn't know, weren't sure, and so they chose to lock down. I saw about 10 of the teachers yesterday, which was very bittersweet. I've been really wanting to see them, as you can imagine. It's almost like a coach wanting to see his team, like they performed, like I wasn't there, like they did it.
Well, and it would give you a sense of understanding what they remembered, what you have set in their minds in stone versus maybe some of the things that they lost in the moment, right?
Yeah, and very specifically, one of the things we do that makes us pretty different as a company is we do live fire in your building, real guns and real ammo. And people are like, how in the world do you do that? We have a bullet trap that we drag around with us, and we do real ammo because blanks don't sound the same. And I think it's very important for people to understand what gunfire sounds like in a building. It's not nearly as loud as you think it would be. And we do it with a rifle and a pistol because they sound very different. And I had 3 teachers tell me yesterday, when we heard the first noise, we assumed it was the construction going on in the fellowship hall because that's been going on. We hear a bunch of banging. When we heard the next 2 or 3, we all knew exactly what it was because we'd heard it in our schools before, and we knew to immediately lock down and barricade. So what's that worth? I mean,
if I ask you a question, and I know you will, but if I ask you a question that you can't speak to, because I understand that you perhaps have been privy to some information that's not yet public, but there has been conversation about the fire alarm. Do we know how the fire alarms went off? I mean, and if you can't say, obviously I understand that.
Without knowing for sure, there's a 99.9% chance right now that it's the smoke from her rifle.
Okay.
And I've experienced that same thing before doing that, what I just told you we do in the buildings.
Right, you fire and the muzzle smoke.
Especially for an AR, it puts off a lot of smoke. And in a confined kind of vestibule space like that was, where she initially shot through and fired all those first rounds at the first victim, who was just right there, pretty close. I'm gonna guarantee you that's what set it off. I did not see any pulled alarms anywhere.
Because in the aftermath of tragedies like this, you hear anecdotal stories, you hear rumors get spread around, and I'm just trying to get to the truth of it, and I get that some stories were going around about a student pulling one of the alarms and
other stories about the shooter doing it. I mean, there's a lot of but none of that appears to be true. It appears to be the smoke from a rifle.
There was no breach of any classrooms by the assailant, by the shooter.
That's right.
And you said earlier this week that, and it seems odd to say it sitting here at Bold Patriot, but I get it, I understand it, that there were some classrooms that had to be breached physically by the police because the people on the other side of the doors weren't opening the doors for anybody, which is the way that it should be, right?
Yeah. So let me hit that first, and then I'll back up on the other one. I get asked a lot, especially by teachers, should we open the door if they're saying police? And I tell them if it's the police, they'll have a key or they'll open the door. Like, if you're not sure, if you don't feel comfortable, don't do it. And tons of doors were breached by the cops. And to me, that's a win because they did what they were told to do. They didn't feel comfortable opening the door. They weren't sure who it was. And so they didn't. And that's what I want to hear. We can fix your door, right? I mean, we can't bring people back. As far as no classrooms breached, I can't get into a ton of detail, but I will tell you she fired, I don't know how many rounds at 2 rooms in particular. And I tried to breach based on where some of those rounds were placed on that door, and she didn't get in. There were students and teachers in both those rooms. And the fact that they could perform under that amount of stress when there's 5, 6 rounds flying through their door into their classroom, and they're able to They'd already locked down at that point, but they're able to get their kids out of the line of fire and keep them there under that amount of stress is just unbelievable to me.
You train us to get it's human nature. And I want to delve into this more broadly, not specifically to the Covenant School. It's human nature that if I run into a room and I know that there's a gunman in the hallway, I'm going to try to run as far away from that hallway as possible. And that is typically the opposite wall from the door that I just ran through. And that is the wrong thing to do.
That's right.
Talk to me about the right thing to do.
So hard corners save lives, and that was proven Monday. Your hard corner is this. If you stand outside any room, I don't care if it's your bedroom, whatever.
You're in the doorway.
Well, you're just outside the doorway.
Yeah, okay.
But with the doorway open, and you tell me where in that room can you not see or shoot?
That's your hard corner.
That's right. And it's usually it's the same wall that the door is on and as far away from the door as possible in whichever direction. It doesn't really matter.
And teachers found those hard corners Monday.
I know for a fact that during the event, they were communicating amongst each other on the way they were communicating. I'm not going to get into that. But that the word hard corners was repeated multiple times.
Brink Fiddler's with us from Defense Systems talking about his experience with Covenant School and training and what he experienced earlier this week. We'll continue. We'll ask some of your questions on the Super Text line in just a moment. It's 2:21 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Conventional safety.
Hey, back off the return just a little bit. Kirby's begging.
Another march scheduled in wake of the Covenant shooting, and now the funeral proceedings for those 6 victims tragically lost are all starting. That and more 2:30 right here, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy. It is 2:25. We're at Bold Patriot Brewing Company. We invite you to come by and say hello to us. We'd love to say hello to you. A lot of you have already done so, and we appreciate that. I so appreciate my good friend Brink Fiddler for stopping by. I know this is tough, and I don't know if this is. I mean, you're saying that this is something that you've never experienced before, I guess, in terms of. Certainly this stage of your life, defense systems, and maybe any stage of your life with your Metro Nashville Police experience. But and so, obviously, if I ask you questions and you can't go there, I get that. So I just want to reiterate that. But a lot of people are asking questions online. I want to get to some of those. But we talked about the teacher response and the incredible lives that were saved as a result of that response. You told me that textbook was the way that you described the Metro Nashville Police response. Yep. We played the response video, and I got emotional when they go in and they start clearing rooms, and because they've not heard, they don't know where the threat is,
right? And
they're trying to assess where the threat is. Is that walk me through what we see on the video from an experience standpoint about what the mindset is and how that changed when they heard shots.
So you saw him say, give me three. It's a 4-man team to be the most effective. So as soon as they opened the door, they didn't have any stimulus, right? That's the term we use, meaning nothing to go on, no shots to follow, nothing. So you have to start hitting rooms because you just don't know. You have to start room clearing. You can't bypass them and just start guessing where somebody is. It just doesn't work. So their tactics were just impeccable, and they hit those 2 rooms, and they came out of that last room, and they're in that kind of foyer where that big round desk is. That's just when you turn that corner, those other doors, that's actually the main entrance to the school. So that's where they're located when they hear stimulus upstairs. So they go to the first set of stairs they can find. They go upstairs, they get there, and they got decisions to make out that door, left or right, but they knew it was coming from the right. They pressed down that hall. They hung it right again, just following the sound, pressing the fight. And I want to talk about two.
And they yelled, "Press!" I mean, I think that I have that right. I mean, and that's what we're talking about, right?
Yep. And had the 2 up front that when they came to that last threshold where that evil, I'm going to stop there, was the pistol and shotgun guy had the wherewithal to say L. And with an LPVO is just the type of scope that was on top of that rifle that was with them. They were calling the rifle guy up, and that's totally appropriate from a tactics perspective. That is a dominant weapon system. He's right there with them. They know she's right around this corner. And I walked it off actually yesterday. It was about 14.5-yard shot. So with a pistol, that's not super high percentage under that amount of stress. It's much more appropriate to let that rifle dominate, and that's exactly what happened. And they don't. He put 4 rounds downrange, dropped her, but then when Collazo came around the corner with a pistol, she was still moving with the weapon, and he, put a few more to stop that.
And I feel compelled to bring this up because there's some that watch the video that might be less experienced or don't have conversations with people who are so experienced like you. You can't make a determination why the movement's happening at that point. There's some like, well, why did the second guy shoot her too? Well, Collazo she's moving.
She still had a gun,
gun,
and she's still moving, and she was just trying to murder hundreds of people.
Right.
That's why you make sure the threat is stopped.
In the immediate aftermath of, and obviously the job doesn't end there because they have no idea whether or not there's another person, another assailant.
Right.
And so they continue. I would expect that the Metro Nashville Police Department, we don't see it on video, but they continue. They have to clear the entire area and then get, as fast as they possibly can, get medical in. I want to talk to you about that and talk to you about what went on at that stage in just a moment. It's 2:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Brink Fiddler in with us. We're at Bold Patriot Brewing. Back in a moment. Super Talk 99.7 WTN 235. We're at Bold Patriot Brewing Company. Would love to see you. Thank you for stopping by. A lot of you have, and I appreciate that so much. I so appreciate Brink Fiddler stopping by on what has been an incredibly trying week for not just Brink and in his job capacity with Defense Systems, but also much like many of you, who have reached out and said that you knew people within the Covenant School, or you went to the church associated with Covenant School, and obviously Brink is familiar with all these folks. I mean, you worked with all these folks from a training capacity, from the headmistress on down, and so I know that this is troubling from a business perspective, but it's also obviously, societal perspective, but it is incredibly and very personal. I want to go through some of the questions being asked on the super text line because I promised that I would, and one involved the lady who was outside. Here's the question from 3220. I haven't heard anyone talk about the lady who was giving the policemen information before they went into the building. I thought she was amazing, had a ton of information for them. She's a hero.
Hands down, and I know a lot more about her personally in that situation that I'm going to not elaborate on just out of respect for her because I don't know what she would want shared. But that was flawless. I mean, knowing that there's kids and coworkers in that building, but also knowing how critical that piece was for her to go outside, stay calm, give them a key, give them the information, all the stuff we talked about. I mean, she did it, and there's a lot more she did that day after that again, I have not I found out about yesterday, and I'm just not at liberty to talk about yet. But if you think what you saw her doing then makes her a hero, then you will be absolutely blown away when the rest of these facts come out.
We were told, and I'm sensitive to what you just said, but we were told that the headmaster of the school was on a Zoom call at the time that all of this started going down, and that she was a hero in and of herself, and that she immediately went to the sound of the gunfire. I mean, that she attempted to engage and try to, I guess, diffuse the situation or try to prevent harm coming to her kids and her staff.
I do know she was on a Zoom call, and I've talked to one of the people she was on that Zoom call with. It's another head of school that's a friend of mine. And she immediately left. The alarm went off. There was noise. She wasn't sure what it was. She went to go find out because even if I had been sitting there and said, Catherine, that's gunfire, and I don't care if I had a rope tied around her waist, she'd have drugged me down that hall. That's the kind of person she is. She was going to go figure out what it was and then be a leader and tell people what to do. And went down that hall, and evil rounded the corner before she could, So, yeah, that's very true.
Have we been able to ascertain? Have you been able to ascertain? We do know that everyone who lost their lives that day lost their lives in a common like hallway areas. Is that correct?
That's true. Yep.
Is it just a matter of before people realize really what's happening, before they're able to start processing and start the training that Defense Systems utilizes, they get caught? I mean, do you feel like that's what happened?
Yeah, kind of perfect
in this case.
Kind of perfect storm stuff. You got to remember the fire alarm's going off, so that's confusing by itself.
Because we're taught to leave the classrooms and get out of the school when the fire alarm goes off.
Yeah, and I don't know that's what happened. I haven't dissected that with all these teachers. I'm going to, but yes, in any given situation on any school day in America, there's always going to be staff or students moving about the hall whether classes are going on or not, right? So I am comfortable sharing, though, that they were all in common spaces. That is a true statement.
Something that you taught us, and you said at the time when we were in the training, that it seems impossible to believe about that police officers are literally taught that they have to step over wounded people. Even, I think the way that you put it is that you're taught that if it's your kid, that you have to neutralize the threat first. And I think we saw some of that in the body cam footage as well, that they are trained. And it's hard for people to understand that haven't gone through your training or haven't spoken to people who have gone through police training, that you just have to neutralize the threat first.
They told us when we went through this training, because we're in Nashville and a lot of the officers live in Nashville, so they're going to be talking about their own children's school. They told us specifically, you have to prepare yourself and your brain right now to step over your own child at your child's school to stop the threat, because if you don't, there's more people dying. So yes, that's definitely taught. talking about their response to the threat, and I know we talked about this on the break, but I want to make sure people understand this. Of that 4-man team that went in, if you notice the weapon systems, there's 1 rifle, 1 shotgun, and 2 handguns. The guys with the 2 handguns had other options, just so you know. They chose not to get those better, more offensive options because seconds mattered. Not only that, all 4 of those guys went in with soft armor, which does not stop rifle rounds. All 4 of them
Explain the difference between soft and hard.
Soft armor will stop handgun rounds. Hard armor will stop rifle rounds. And every officer in Nashville has access to hard armor. They all have it. They have plates. They left that because it was an active situation where people were getting killed, and it greatly increases your chance of death, greatly if you're not well prepared. And they didn't care. They pressed the fight and finished it, like, period. I'm telling they are the model, like, for the country. End of story.
I said earlier this week that it's not an out there statement to tell. I mean, well, you'll know that they'll utilize this video for years to come, training officers. I mean, this is a model of how you do it.
100%.
Do you think, from the super text line, do you think it would have made a difference if any of the instructors or staff would have been armed?
I could have. It depends on where they were when this unfolded, what they were armed with. You know, how much spare ammunition do they have? You know, again, I mean, it's have they trained in that building? You know, that's a big thing we do with some of our school security teams is we do simunitions training in their building, because just going to a gun range and learning how to shoot at a piece of paper that doesn't shoot back at you, that's called marksmanship, and that's important. But you need to learn how to understand to win a gunfight in your building.
You know, when we went through the TECC course, when you allowed me to go through that course several weeks ago, the final training exercise, I don't
give it away.
Well, but I don't think I told you this at the time.
Okay.
But I went back home and told Eric, I said it was a little over the top. I mean, there's heavy metal music blaring, there's sirens going off, and at one point there's bullets flying, or you know, that's the perception that you have. And at the time I was like, boy, you know, Brink's just kind of going wild with this. And that's true. And in the moment, in the training exercise, it's kind of funny. But I get it, because when you see the video, I mean, there's sirens going on. There's all of this exterior stimuli that's happening. And you have to, whether you're a teacher or someone that's just caught in the middle or someone like these police officers trained, you've got to be able to kill all that exterior stimuli and focus on what you have to focus on, right?
Right. And just so people are clear, that class is not for everybody. We don't do that to the teachers.
No. This is a little above and beyond.
We do it for law enforcement and then, you know, security. I mean, there are civilians that come through it, but we're clear with them, like, hey, this is not.
You let us know up front that this is going to be a real. You try to make it as real life of a scenario as possible during that course.
That's it. We make it as real as we can make it.
Couple of other questions. I want to get to as many as I can. Do they have bars for the doors in the classrooms?
They did have secondary locking devices. I'm not going to get into what they were. They did have secondary locking devices. Some of them were engaged. Some of them were not. I will say this on secondary locking devices, and again, I'm not going to get into which ones they had, but the only one that I found that I feel comfortable getting behind is called Haven Lock. I've tested it personally. They were on Shark Tank a few years ago. You're not going to defeat it. But the big reason I like it for schools is it doesn't require you to be behind the door placing it. You can do it with a push of a button from the hard corner.
Mm-hmm.
All those other devices, or most of them, require you to be behind the door placing the device, which puts you in the line of fire. So that's why I don't like those.
You get very, very passionate when we talk generally about schools and the lessons that architects and people who build schools don't seem to have learned from past experiences.
Yep.
I want to go over some of those concepts because they're so important, like doors that open in as opposed to open out. We want doors that open out into the hallway, right? Not doors that open in.
Correct.
Explain why.
Because you can't kick in an outswing door. I mean, you just can't do it. You're fighting the whole jam. So, and we're not seeing them really breach many locked doors anyway. We're seeing them try, but just imagine the difference between an in-swing and an out-swing door. I mean, if I do shoot the crap out of the lock and the handle and the lock set and then start kicking on an in-swing door, I might defeat it eventually. On an out-swing door, you're still not going to defeat it.
Because you have the entire jam to deal with.
Right. So that's a bit, and then also classroom doors that lock from inside the classroom.
And then obviously most schools that I go into have some form of window on the door. And you're such an advocate for shades or some sort of ability to shut that down so that a potential shooter cannot see inside of the classroom.
Yeah, take their vision away. That was really important in the Parkland, Florida shooting. They did not get their windows covered, and he did not even attempt to open a classroom door because they were all locked, and he knew that. Actually, I think one was unlocked, but he knew that because he went to school there. But he was able to shoot a ton of students because he either shot through that window or through the door because he could see through the window and could see where people were.
All right, you guys listening online and listening here at Bowl Patriot Brewing, you might have noticed that I have not spoken with Brink very much today during our conversation about motivation of the shooter. And that's kind of how I want to wrap up before we talk about defense systems a little bit more for those listening that might want to try to, at some point down the road, get the good training that you provide. You taught me a lot about your world perspective on motivation. We gravitate to motivation. Human curiosity wants to know what's in the manifesto, as they're calling it, what went into the mental illness that created the dynamic by which someone would do something like this. And from your perspective, and you taught me this, that it does not matter that much in terms of your training.
Right. Well, there's two things on that. So learning behavioral pre-attack indicators, yes, of course, that's important. That's not the same thing as motivation, right? What motive is. Pre-attack indicators and motive are two different things. We as humans crave closure, right? We always want to understand why somebody did something. And
we try to make sense of the senseless.
100%. But at the end of the day, even if you figure out why this person did this, it will not stop the next one because every shooter's why is different. So it's not going to prevent the next one just because we understand why this one did it, right? Pre-attack indicators, behaviors, things like that, 100%. But actual motive, it does not make any difference. It was a sick human being that chose to murder innocent people. And just because we understand why they did it does not stop the next one.
Also, but you mentioned off air, and I want to circle back to it, medical. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the timing of getting medical personnel into a facility like this and how important it is for staff and those in charge to have some basic understanding. I know because I went through some of that advanced training, but how literally seconds matter in those types of situations.
Yeah. So what I was talking about on the break, just as a reminder. So a big part of our curriculum is medical. Pre-hospital care and bleeding control. Out of our 4 hours of training, the last hour is medical because that is the difference maker. That was the difference maker in Las Vegas. That's why there was an 86% survival rate in Las Vegas, period. I've got the video.
That's the Harvest Music Festival.
Yep,
for those who don't know.
Route 91 festival. So, and we harp on that because bleeding control is a life skill. It's not just for active shooters. It's for car crashes. It's for everything else too. And that school took that to heart. They did not just go through the training and merely receive the one kit that we include as part of training. They had, 30-something kits throughout that school. And as I walked through that crime scene, in multiple classrooms, those kits were out and staged. So the fact that these teachers, who are like moms and, have the heart of a teacher, the fact that they're able to perform while 5.56 rounds are flying through their door or down their hallway and there's people screaming and there's literally people dying, and they're able to perform in their classroom, lock and barricade the door, get their kids where they need to go, and have the wherewithal to stage their med gear because they've been trained and they're ready to treat people, just blows me away. That's what I'm saying. Like, people keep talking about training, I'll go back to that. But I was not there that day, and the fact that they performed like they did is just unbelievable to me. So they deserve the credit because they're the ones that sent those babies home, period.
Well, and by extension, you. And I know I know you well enough to know that you're going to shake your head and go, no. But yeah, but by extension, you provide the training, and as long as you've got a receptive vessel to soak that training up, lives can be saved. That's what it's all about.
Well, that's why I do it. I mean, it's my life. Yep.
Anything else?
No. I mean, the police response was impeccable. The teacher's response was impeccable. It's just further proof that the people in the building knowing what to do is the most important piece. Cameras, access control, armed guards, SROs, all that stuff is a great part of the solution. But if the people that are in that building don't know what to do, none of that other stuff matters.
I'll ask you one political question.
Okay.
In the aftermath of this, is there any excuse for Nashville elementary schools not to have SROs?
There was no excuse for it prior to this. I can't imagine we're leaving our kids unprotected in the world we live in.
When we have the money, we have the ability. All we have to do is get the authority.
From a manpower perspective, I would say we don't have the people. I would say that the police department is ridiculously short.
Over 300 short?
I don't think they're going to give you that number, but I would say it's close to that based on leave and military and all that kind of stuff. It's drastic. They're doing the best they can with what they have. But, there's a huge recruiting problem right now nationwide because we've spent the last 3 years vilifying the police. Who wants to do that job anymore? And, you're carrying out, a critically injured, 9-year-old from a school to an ambulance, it'd be hard to come back from, what I'm saying? Like, it's a tough enough job anyway. And then if we vilify them on top of that, why do you think we have a shortage? So from police department standpoint, they're not doing anything wrong. I think we need
manpower.
We need to prioritize it, fund it. If we got to hire them, hire them. Even if we're just hiring them just for the SRO position, let's do that. But we just in Metro, we just lack a ton of stuff as far as the schools go. Just look up Dennis Ferrier stories.
I know that you have spoken personally with many of the individuals that were there at the scene.
Yeah.
Do they know how much we appreciate them?
They don't. That's why. I looked at one of the teachers yesterday that was in one of the 2 rooms that was really hammered on by the shooter, and I said, I don't think you understand how much of a rock star you are. I really don't, because she was just so flippant about it. But I don't think she'd had time to really process it all because, they lost kids and they lost coworkers and that kind of stuff. And they don't. I am kind of serving as somewhat of a conduit between them and the police. And there is plans in the work for me to sit down with them privately, and kind of unpack all this. But, we got funerals to deal with before that. So
I know that it's not what you're here for, but I've had enough people ask me just defendsystems.com is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
To get in contact with you.
Yeah, there's a contact form on the website. That's the best. Just please give us some grace because this has garnered a lot of national media. And so I think Tracy told me this morning that we've been contacted by people from 23 different states so far. Just give us some grace, please. We're working through it.
Well, thank you for everything. Thank you for what you did for Covenant School, and thank you for being willing to come on and talk with us about it. I know it's hard.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, though. It is important to get the message out.
There's Brink Fiddler, everybody. That wraps up the week. We're at Bold Patriot Brewing Company. Thank you. There's some applause for Brink, and rightly so. We're going to wrap it up and hand off to the drive with Brian Wilson next, and we'll see you on Monday. So long, folks.